They say the desert buries its secrets under sand, but Lantern Hill prefers fire. It's a small Arizona town, the kind that smells like dust and citrus peels left too long in the sun. The people smile as if someone might take a picture. They wave even when they're planning your obituary. I've lived here 56 years, and I've outlasted most of the waving. My name is Margaret Ellery, though the mail still comes with Mrs. Judge Ellery on the envelope. My husband, Thomas, served on the county bench until the day his heart betrayed him officially, that is. I used to think the word widow meant freedom. Later, I learned it means unfinished business written in someone else's handwriting. The night the detective came, thunder rolled like someone dragging furniture across heaven. I was trimming the lamp wick when I heard the knock, 3 polite taps, then one that meant authority. Mrs. Ellery. A man's voice called. Detective Hayes, Maricopa County. The name meant nothing, but the tone did. Men who work with law and guilt have a cadence that never leaves them. I opened the door. The wind tried to push past us both. He showed me a badge wrapped in rain. Sorry to bother you, ma'am. We're reopening a missing person case. Thought you might remember something. I poured him tea because manners are cheaper than suspicion. The steam-painted halos on his glasses. Name's Lydia Cole, he said, unfolding a photo slick with time. A girl with a chipped tooth smiled up at me, frozen in the kind of hope that makes older women ache. Disappeared 12 years ago after testifying in your husband's courtroom. You recall her? I did. I recalled her trembling hands, her threadbare cardigan, the way she said sir like it might save her. I recalled Thomas's tone, gentle for the record, sharp when the gavel fell. I recalled a file he told me never to touch. I'm sorry, I said, and stirred my tea until the spoon trembled. Names blur after so many trials. He nodded, polite disbelief behind his eyes. We found something during archive digitization, a ledger signed by your late husband. There's an entry tied to Miss Cole's case. Unusual disbursement. His words hung like damp laundry. When he left, I didn't lock the door right away. The house was listening. Rain tapped the roof like fingers on a confession. Upstairs, in the attic that still smelled of his cigars, I opened the cedar trunk I hadn't touched since the funeral. Beneath the folded robes and sermons clipped from the paper lay the ledger, County Discretionary Fund, Judge T. Ellery, each line neat, righteous. And then one that wasn't cash advance, Lydia C., Witness Protection, $1,500, the date, the night she vanished. I sat there until the storm moved east. My hands shook, but not from fear, something colder. The judge had preached order. He'd hidden chaos between the pages. By morning, Lantern Hill smelled of wet mesquite and rumors. The market women already knew the county was digging things up. They said it like gardening. I bought lemons I didn't need just to prove I was still part of the living. That afternoon, I went to the churchyard. Thomas's headstone waited, polished monthly by someone trying to repent. I laid the ledger on his name and whispered, "They're coming, darling. I hope your alibi holds up in heaven." The wind turned the pages as if curious. Asterisk the widow of Lantern Hill. Part 2. The next morning I swept the porch that didn't need sweeping. It's a ritual for people who have something to think about and nowhere yet to put it. The broom rasped like a match across old wood. By 8, the heat was already practicing for noon. Detective Hayes returned without thunder, just a cruiser humming at the curb and a knock that asked permission. He held a paper sack from the diner. "Brought a biscuit," he said. "Figured you'd be up." "Figured correctly," I said, stepping aside. "People who can't sleep don't waste mornings." He placed a photocopy on the table beside the sack. A ledger page. My husband's square script, that same entry, cash advance. Lydia C., Witness Protection, $1,500. Below it, a scrawl I hadn't noticed last night. Ref, Motel 3C. You ever hear of a witness protection fund run from a judge's desk? Hayes asked. I heard my husband call things by names that made them behave, I said, pouring coffee. Sometimes the names were aspirational. He smiled despite himself. We're trying to locate where Lydia went after court. Motel reference maybe means a staging place. Old archives say Lantern Motor Lodge kept paper books. Sal still runs it, I said. If you ask him nicely, he'll show you the room where Elvis did not stay. Hayes tucked the copy away. Mind if we take the original ledger for a day or two? I mind, I said, and watched disappointment flicker. But I'll bring you a copy with the margins intact. The margins matter. He left the biscuit. It tasted of butter and apology. At 10, I walked to Lantern Motor Lodge, a strip of bleached doors and a faded sign where the Wynn motor had long ago given up being round. Sal sat behind the counter, reading a fishing magazine as if water were still a friend. "Mrs. Ellery," he said, standing like a gentleman from a training film. "You look like a person who needs facts. Detective Hayes looked like a person who asked for them." I said. Sal rubbed his chin. "He came by yesterday. I told him what I'll tell you. 12 years back, girl came here after court with an envelope and a face that looked both ways at once. Checked into room 3C. Couple hours later, a man came. Tall, county windbreaker, chain on his wallet. Paid cash for 3D, 'cause I don't do adjoining for official business," I said. He laughed. "Nothing official about this. Left it at that. You still have the book?" I asked. He ducked beneath the counter and produced a ledger so thick it had its own weather. He licked his finger and turned pages till the dust offered a date. There it was, all cold 3C cash. R. Mercer 3D opening parenthesis cash closing parenthesis. Mercer. The name rolled in my head like a marble in a bowl. Thomas's old bailiff, Ray Mercer, polite in the courtroom, crude in the hallways. I remembered the way he held doors and opinions with equal force. "Detective, take a copy." I asked. "Didn't let him," Sal said. "I will." He photocopied the page on a machine that coughed like a lifetime smoker and handed it over. "I lock the older books in the office nights," he added, "on account of curious raccoons and other mammals." "Wise," I said. "Both kinds have thumbs." I walked home with the sun on my hat and Mercer's name under my palm. I did not call Hayes, not yet. I have learned that men with badges want to run at things, and sometimes the thing lets them. Sometimes it steps aside. The courthouse hadn't changed because courthouses don't believe in time. Dolores in archives wore her hair in the same careful bun she wore to my husband's retirement party. She remembered my birthday and my disappointments. "Dolores," I said, "I need chain of custody receipts for withdrawals from discretionary funds the week of Lydia Cole's testimony." She adjusted her glasses, sniffed bureaucracy like a bloodhound. "We keep those in box D19. But they've been reorganized. By who?" She lowered her voice. "Interim clerk when the county switched to digital." He was very enthusiastic about shredders. "Enthusiasm is a vice in an archivist," I said. She led me to a basement room where old cases sleep. Box D19 wore dust like a shawl. Inside, carbon copies curled like old leaves, signatures that had lost their ink, and a gap numbers jumping as if a page had decided to be elsewhere. "Which page is missing?" I said. Dolores pointed to the inventory taped inside the lid. 19B. It should be a withdrawal voucher for a temporary relocation expense. "And who signed it?" She tapped the list again. "Deputy Clerk, H. Bennett, Bailiff, or Mercer, Judge." A flourish I knew like a scar. I thanked her, kissed her cheek, and climbed the courthouse steps slower than I used to. Age is a metronome with no mercy. Justice is a rhythm you can still keep if you count correctly. Back home, I took the judge's ledger and the motel copy, laid them on the dining table like confronting old friends at a reunion. I opened the china hutch and reached behind the good plates to the small tin where I keep my cowardice. Inside lay a safe deposit key from Sandbox Trust and Savings, Thomas's second office when the first was too public. The bank smelled the same. Manufactured trust, old pennies, carpet. Marta at reception had lacquered hair and a memory that made people nervous. She looked at the key and then at me with curiosity disguised as customer service. "Box number?" she asked. "Judge Ellery's personal," I said. "He is indisposed." "In what way?" she asked. "Grave," I said, and watched her blink. Quite literally, she checked signatures. Compared my name to a card older than Hayes, in the vault. She set the narrow metal box on a little table and left me politely alone with our past. Inside, cigar bands, a pocket gavel, and an old microcassette labeled Cole-1204. A manila envelope held photographs, Polaroids with bad flash. Lydia on a motel bed still in court clothes, eyes blown wide. Another, worse, Mercer in the doorway, hand on a badge that wasn't his to flash off duty. Two more, a white sedan with county plates outside 3D. A wrist with a bracelet Lydia's abandoned on the sink. My legs remembered how to chair. I sat, cassette in my palm like a fever stone. There was also a folded letter addressed in my husband's script, only that single initial. He never wasted ink on intimacy. If you are reading this, then I was either a coward in life or too late in death to correct what I enabled. Mercer said the girl needed short-term supervision until federal transfer. Funds were logged to appear proper. I did not ask which hand took the money. I did not ask where he meant to hold her. That night he called, said she'd bolted. He laughed. I found no record of any transfer. I found cheap soap on a county badge. I have kept these photographs and this tape because confession without evidence is theater, and I have staged enough. I put everything back in the envelope except the cassette. That I slid into my purse like a weapon too small to be noticed. At home I dragged out my old dictaphone saved from a principal's closet when the school switched to digital. I fed it to batteries and the tape. The machine whirred with a sound from another century. Voices spilled out. Lydia's, trying to be brave. Mercer's, trying to be God. Mercer, judge says we got you for the night. Keep you safe. In the morning, feds take over. See? All legal. Lydia, I want to call Miss Jameson. Mercer, you want to get home alive. Then you don't call anyone. Door. Footsteps. A sink running. Mercer, lower. Open the envelope. Lydia, what is this? Mercer, expense money. For your trouble. Lydia, I told the truth. Mercer, people who tell the truth need handlers. The tape hissed. Then a scuffle. Something fell, a lamp or a woman. The recorder clicked stopped, then resumed minutes later. Breath, a muffled curse. A car door closing, twice. Silence stretched its legs. I didn't cry. The tears in me are old. They only come when invited now. I dialed Hayes and invited him instead. He arrived fast enough to look noble. I played the tape. I showed the photographs. He listened without interrupting, not even with sympathy, which is the only way to honor a person once they cannot veto your kindness. Where did you get this? He asked finally. From the man who taught me how to iron a robe and how to iron the truth, I said. He left me both chores. We'll need statements. Chain of custody. A warrant for Mercer's place. He scrubbed his jaw. If he's smart, he's burned anything he kept. Mercer's not smart, I said. Mercer is arrogant. And arrogant men archive their sins under trophies. Hayes stood. I'm going to the magistrate. Keep the tape safe. Do not answer your door unless it's me or a cat. I'll send a patrol to sit outside. Don't, I said. Lantern Hill minds cops like a rash. Sit a Corolla with a nosy neighbor instead. Dolores owes me a favor. He stared a beat, then nodded. You're something, Mrs. Ellery. I am a woman with a broom and a ledger, I said. It is a terrifying combination. When he left, I brewed tea I did not drink and sat by the lamp I'd trimmed the night he first knocked. The flame burned honest. It always had. On the table, the pudding pyramid of my life ledgers, photos, the tape weighted like ingredients before a recipe that would not forgive mistakes. At midnight, a stone hit my porch. I didn't flinch. Cowards are predictable. I waited, counted to 30 so whoever threw it could enjoy himself, then gathered my shawl and went outside. On the steps lay a newspaper, rolled and rubber-banded Lantern Hill Gazette, tomorrow's date. Tucked inside, a strip of photographs not of Lydia, of me, at the bank, the courthouse, the lodge. A voice from the dark prickled the hair on my neck. Evening, Mrs. Ellery. I know voices. This one had stale beer for breath. I see you, I said. Good, Mercer replied. Then see this, you stir the ashes, you'll choke your friends. He stepped into the porch light enough for the bruises around his eyes to tell their own stories. Men like him always collect enemies and call them weather. Go home, Ray, I said. Before you learn what my husband didn't teach you. And what's that? He sneered. That widows run slow, I said, and still arrive. He laughed, ugly as a spill. You think some old tape's gonna bury me. No, I said. I think your pride already did. He tossed the newspaper back and walked off into a night that wasn't sure it wanted him. I didn't sleep. Dawn came anyway, like a good clerk. I was waiting on the porch when Hayes returned, warrant in hand and a face that meant momentum. We've got enough for a search, he said. His place. His locker at the county. And this is lucky the storage unit he stopped paying on. Auction company called. We put a hold. Luck is just a confession of someone else's planning, I said, standing. Let's go watch arrogance unpack itself. The Widow of Lantern Hill, Part 3. Mercer lived in a ranch house with ambitions. The lawn tried to be green and failed honestly. 2 uniforms stood by the mailbox while Hayes knocked. No answer. The door opened anyway under the weight of a warrant. Inside, the smell was old sweat, new solvent. Men like Mercer clean when they panic. They never clean the right things. The living room was staged football on mute, a magazine open to prove literacy. The kitchen betrayed him, bleach bottle and cap, trash can scrub too late, a receipt from Lantern Motor Lodge under a magnet that said my boss thinks I'm working. Check the garage, Hayes said. He and I moved down the hall, past a bedroom with a made bed and an unmade life, to a door with a padlock on the inside. A trophy room never wants an audience. The key in Mercer's desk fit. The lock popped like a bad idea. Inside, shelves. On them, boxes labeled with dates and names: Cole, Bentley, Hernandez, and a row of wristbands from the county jail, strung like fish. There was also a county badge in a frame and an old flip phone tucked in a cigar tin. Hayes blew out a breath that might have been a prayer. Photograph everything, then bag it. I stood in the doorway and stared at the labels the way you stare at graves you didn't know you'd need to visit. Hayes handed me gloves. You shouldn't be touching anything. Then don't tell me what I'm touching, I said, and pointed with a knuckle to a showbox labeled Cole. He opened it, slow. Inside, a bracelet the same from the photo, slim silver with a charm shaped like a sparrow. A motel keycard for 3C. A roll of bills secured with a county receipt band. And a micro SD card in a plastic sleeve marked 3C vid. God, Hayes whispered. He recorded her, or himself, I said. Men who keep trophies prefer mirrors. He bagged the card like it might poison him, which was correct in a fashion. Another box held newspapers clipped to articles about cases my husband tried. Mercer had circled sentences, underlined names, and scribbled due in the margins like fate owed him rent. Locker necks, Hayes said, snapping back to function. We left 2 uniforms and a camera in the house and drove to the county annex where a row of metal lockers slouched against a wall like bored teenagers. Mercer's rank had afforded him a bigger 121 which now surrendered, resentful, to Hayes's key. Inside, county windbreaker, extra handcuffs, a bound notebook embossed with T, my husband's initials. I took it as if it might bruise. It was his bench diary, not the official docket book. The other one, the private volume where a man writes what the robe won't let him say. Hernandez motion denied. Counsel sloppy. Mercer insolent. Bentley bond revoked. Defendant terrified. Mercer pleased. Cole girl small as a sparrow in winter. Mercer to assist. I permitted. Regret follows like a dog. It continued notes about Mercer's temper. A line about a lost voucher and an argument over side money. A final page. Written the week before the heart attack. Ray said the dessert keeps secrets. I told him widows don't. I closed the book and felt both love and indictment throb under my fingers. Thomas had left me a map drawn by a coward who finally bought a compass. At the storage unit, a woman with a clipboard met us with the neutrality of someone who sells strangers their own mistakes. She slid the bolt cutter under the lock like a sermon. The door rose on a corrugated cave of Mercer's life, the detritus of a man who never learned to throw away what might later make him feel like a god. Camping gear, coolers, a chest freezer, unplugged, thank every saint who keeps the living. Start there, Hayes said, pointing to a metal cabinet with another padlock. The bolt cutter did its work, and the cabinet side opened to reveal digital cameras, mini DV tapes, and a box of motel soaps taken like badges of travel. He read the tape labels, some dates, some only 3C for B, judge. Bag the lot, he told the tech. We're done with Ray. We weren't, not by half. But we had the story by the throat. The rest would be letting it kick. That night the Gazette ran a headline that tried to be careful and failed. Former bailiff under investigation. The paper lifted old photos Mercer at a community barbecue. Arm around the judge, T-shirt that said back the gavel. Lantern Hill learned to gossip again with purpose. Church groups met as if scripture had sprouted an appendix. The mayor smiled on TV about welcoming transparency with the same mouth he used to toast Thomas. I made soup because boiling things is an ancient ritual when a town needs steam. At 9, Hayes knocked. He looked more tired than any man has a right to look in public. We imaged the SD card, he said. It's what we thought. He filmed the rooms. There's a gap the night Lydia disappears. We think he stopped the camera himself, but the timestamp shows him going in and out with a woman over his shoulder and he stopped. We'll redact. The DAW won't need the worst if we have the rest, and the tape, I asked, matches the timeline. We've got him on holding her without legal authority and misusing funds. With the trophy room, the jury will see him. And my husband? I said. I didn't mean to ask it aloud. It walked out anyway. What will they see? Hayes watched my hands and not my eyes, which is what a decent man does when an indecent answer is the only one on the test. They'll see a judge who signed a voucher he shouldn't have. Some will say he enabled. Some will say he was fooled. Most will say nothing because dead men are hard to argue with. Dead men are easier than live secrets, I said. He set a folder on my table. I wanted you to see this before the DAW does. Inside, a still from Mercer's video, grainy, head turned, but unmistakable, my husband outside 3D, back to the camera, hand on Mercer's shoulder. The caption read, 23 hours 19 minutes and 12 seconds. He went there, Hayes said, not accusing, just setting a plate. We can't hear what he said. We can only see that he saw. The lamp hummed. The house leaned in. My throat settled into a shape I hadn't used since the funeral. Thomas went to tell him to stop, I said. That's the story I practiced for a decade. Then I think about the way he wrote regret follows like a dog. And I wonder if he only taught it to heal. Hayes left the still for me to keep or burn. Arraignment's in 2 days, he said. He's not making bail. The town's going to get loud. Let it, I said. Sometimes a town needs the quiet shook out. After he left, I carried the still to the churchyard. The moon had been ironed. It lay flat and bright on the stones. I propped the photo against Thomas's marker with a rock to keep it honest. They're going to say your name and mean it again, I said. Not like a blessing. Like a question. I'll answer it for you or I won't. I laid my palm on the stone. It wasn't cold. It wasn't warm. It was exactly what it was. On the way home, a car trailed slow, lights dim. I took the long way, 3 turns that make strangers dizzy. The car kept up. At my gate it idled, then rolled on. A warning, not a reconnaissance. Lantern Hill had more than one man with secrets to lose. I had just tripped the alarm. I made a list at the kitchen table, names Mercer circled in the newspaper clippings. Cases where he had access to people overnight. Women who stopped coming to church and started sending postcards. I'd been a judge's wife long enough to memorize the shape of patterns. This one was a noose. At dawn, the Gazette printed a second edition unheard of since the flood of '89. County announces review of old cases. They always announce reviews like a doctor who says we'll run some tests with the blood already in the syringe. At 10, Dolores phoned. The clerk's office found a sealed envelope in the back of G19, she whispered. It had slipped behind the divider. It's addressed to you. Looks old. It was old, and open like a confession. Thomas is writing again, but labored. *M, Ray is not clever. He is patient. Patient men make clever look lazy. If something happens to me, do not let them eulogize my discernment. I did not discern. I permitted. I will not write the word guilt because my hand refuses. So, responsibility. I chose that. The girl deserved a policewoman and bright halls. I gave her a motel. The county deserved clean ledgers. I gave it a mess with margins. Do what I did not. Do what I did not. I folded the letter, and for the first time since my hair went honestly white, I allowed myself a small, ugly laugh. My husband, meticulous in every public way, had left me a scavenger hunt of shame and evidence. I could bless him or damn him. Either way, the town would learn who it had really trusted. Mercer's arraignment filled the courtroom with every kind of vulture. Reporters, county board members, men who call themselves businessmen because they have a card that says so. He entered in a suit that fought his wrists. His lawyer said words that had been said before for worse men: decorated public servant, an unfortunate misunderstanding, prosecution overreach. The judge, not my husband, not a friend, set bail at a number that insulted the concept of numbers. The gallery murmured like old bees. As we filed out, a woman brushed my sleeve. You don't remember me, she said, not accusing. Hernandez. You were kind to me in the hallway once. I remembered the hallway and the way she held her purse like a life jacket. Are you safe? I asked. Safer, she said. Since he ran out of excuses. Mercy has long pockets, I said. Climb in and don't apologize. That night, someone left peaches on my porch. No note. The town has a way of paying in fruit when it can't manage gratitude. I cleaned my dictaphone, stacked my copies, and sharpened a pencil. In the morning, I would go to the radio station and read a letter to Lantern Hill, not a sermon, not a self-immolation. A record, because dark justice is not revenge. It is the ledger balanced aloud. Before bed, I turned the still of Thomas face down. You wanted me to do what you didn't, I said to the wood. I'm more than willing. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere, a man who thought he was a system realized he had always been a symptom. Somewhere else, a detective with rain on his badge poured coffee and said thank you to a janitor who had opened a door at the right time. The desert did not bury our secret. It held it just under the topsoil until an old woman with a broom and a ledger came along to sweep. Dark justice, part for by the start of winter, the town had learned a new kind of silence. Even the wind sounded cautious, as though afraid to be mistaken for gossip. The headlines stopped. The whispers didn't. They called me the widow judge, no, not because I'd ever worn the robe, but because I'd taken the gavel he'd left behind and learned how to use it. And yet, there was one name left. One I'd avoided from the beginning. Eleanor Pierce, the lawyer who had handled all of Thomas's estate work. The woman who'd stood beside me at his funeral, holding my hand with pity so well rehearsed it could have been law itself. She was the keeper of every paper he'd ever signed in. I now suspected every sin he'd tried to bury. That evening, I went to see her. She lived in the hills, in a house to clean for an honest life. She greeted me with a smile that felt sharpened. Margaret, she said, voice warm but thin. I wondered when you'd come. I didn't sit. You knew, I said. Her lips curved slightly. Knew what, exactly? That Lydia Cole didn't run away. That Thomas framed her to protect your firm. And that the sheriff helped him. You filed the falsified documents yourself. Her face didn't flinch, only her hands did, tightening around her glass of wine. You've been busy, she said finally. But revenge isn't a career, dear. It's a contagion. And you, I said softly, were patient zero. She motioned toward the fire. Sit. Let's talk like civilized women. You've won. The men are gone, the town's bleeding reputation, and everyone knows your name again. Isn't that enough? Justice doesn't retire, I replied. She smirked. Then you'll die chasing it. Do you know how many signatures you've left behind, Mrs. Ellery? How many people would love to see you fall? You're not cleansing corruption, you're becoming it. I walked to her desk and placed a folder on it. Inside, the deed transfer of the cabin, now legally mine, acquired through quiet channels in the same system they'd once used to steal lives. I already am it, I said. And that's why I'll finish the job. That night, Eleanor Pierce disappeared. No blood, no struggle, no note. Just a quiet vacancy where power used to sit. People whispered. Some blamed me. Detective Hayes came once more, eyes tired, voice heavy. Tell me she's alive, he said. I tell you only what's true, I replied. And the truth is, some people walk out of the story because they've reached the part they can't rewrite. He studied me for a long moment. If I find out I interrupted. Then you'll find out I was right. Winter passed like penance. The snow covered the graves, the records, the ruins. And Lantern Hill exhaled, not because it was healed, but because it was empty enough to breathe again. I sat most nights on my porch. A blanket over my knees, the desert wind slipping through the dry trees. Somewhere out there. Maybe Eleanor was still breathing. Maybe not. But I didn't need certainty. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't always need witnesses. Only memory. And memory is something I've never misplaced. Dark Justice, Part 5. By spring, Lantern Hill had no heroes left. Just survivors. The air was warm again, but the town felt cold, stripped of its polish, its parades, its hollow speeches. They'd stopped pretending to love me, and that was its own kind of freedom. I kept to my house mostly, the same creaking floors, the same ticking clock that once marked my husband's mornings. Only now, every chime sounded like a warning from the past. It was one of those afternoons when light falls through the blinds like measured confession that I heard a knock. Not a polite one. A knowing one. When I opened the door, Detective Hayes stood there, older somehow, a shadow of the man who'd once trusted the law to be enough. He carried a folder under his arm and a look that said he'd already read too much. "Margaret," he said softly, "we need to talk." He set the folder on my kitchen table. Inside were photos, the cabin, the ledger, the old transcripts. And one new photograph. A body. Half buried in the row behind the old courthouse ruins. Eleanor Pierce. "I suppose this was inevitable," I said. He didn't reply immediately. Just looked at me with something between sorrow and respect. "You don't even deny it." I poured him coffee, slow and steady. "I don't confess to things the earth itself already accepted. God, Margaret," he murmured. "You could have let it end." "It never ends," I said. "You just stop keeping score." He stared at the steam rising between us, as though waiting for it to spell the truth. Then he opened the folder again and slid one more page across the table, a single sheet, stamped and dated. My name. In Thomas's handwriting. "Filed years ago, beneficiary of an authorized trust, Margaret Ellery." For a long moment, the room forgot how to breathe. "What is this?" I asked. "He left the money in your name," Hayes said quietly. "The fund that bribed the sheriff, paid the banker, silenced Lydia Cole's family. You were the ghost signature, Margaret. The whole thing ran under your name." My legs went cold. "He forged it." Hayes nodded once. Maybe not. But every account leads back here. To you." I sat down. The world tilted, not from guilt but from irony. All this time, I had been avenging a legacy built with my own name as its cornerstone. He rose slowly. "They'll come asking questions. Real ones this time. Maybe it's best if you leave town for a while." "I've buried too much to run now," I said. "And besides, where would justice live if I abandoned it?" He looked at me for a long time, then said the words I hadn't expected. "You remind me of him." When he left, the house fell back into silence. And I finally understood what kind of ghost I'd become. That night, I went to the cemetery again. I brought no flowers. Only the last tape, the one I hadn't played. I placed it on Thomas's grave, pressed play, and let the wind carry his voice into the dark. "If you're hearing this, it means you've gone too far, Margaret. I always knew you would. You think you're different, but justice and vengeance share a heartbeat. One just hides it better." The tape clicked off. I laughed, not loud, not cruel. Just quiet enough for the dead to hear. Then I whispered, "You built the cage, Thomas. I just learned how to use the lock." I left the recorder there, still warm, and walked home under a moon that refused to mind its own business. The next morning, the town woke to find a letter pinned to the courthouse doors. No name, no signature, just 3 sentences written in looping, steady cursive. "Every lie we bury blooms. Every truth we fear becomes our child. Raise them well." Some said I'd written it. Some said it was him. Most decided not to ask. Lantern Hill began to heal, in the way deserts heal, quietly, unevenly, leaving the bones where they fell. Detective Hayes retired soon after. The church reopened, humbler this time, and I tended my garden. I grew lavender and rosemary, plants that forgive you for forgetting to water them. Owen, my grandson, came to visit sometimes. He'd ask why the neighbors looked at our house funny. I'd smile and say, "Because truth lives here, and truth makes people uncomfortable." One evening, he asked, "Grandma, did you ever do something bad for a good reason?" I looked at him, really looked, and saw the last honest question left in Lantern Hill. "Yes," I said, "but the reason didn't stay good for long." He nodded solemnly, then went back to drawing in the dirt with a stick. And now, when the night is still enough, the desert hums the same way the courthouse used to, heavy, haunted, waiting, somewhere beneath it all. I know the truth keeps breathing. It doesn't need my help anymore. It just needs my silence. But silence, I've learned, is its own kind of justice. And I will carry it until the dust remembers my name.